This is a story from the West Buckland School archive. I've entitled it, The Rev Thompson Sends a Telegram. At 5 minutes past 10 on the morning of the 24th of May, 1912, the Rev Joseph Thompson, the rector of the village of Walkley in North Devon, walked into his local post office and sent a telegram. It was addressed to Taylor, County School, West Buckland, Filly, North Devon. It said, "Afraid, unable, come Barnstable, please apologise, Thompson." How do I know that? Because that telegram is in the West Buckland School archive, and I am the West Buckland School archivist. I've seen it. I've held it in my hand. Piece of paper, handwritten. It is now 108 years old. Emails and faxes are so universal nowadays that it may come as a jolt to be reminded that we have been using this facility for barely a generation. Before that, the only way of getting a written message to anybody in a hurry was by way of a telegram. So much for the history lesson. Now, who was Taylor? Who was Thompson? And why was he not going to Barnstable? First, Taylor. Adelbert Taylor was a long-serving teacher. He'd been on the staff since 1895 and was to continue serving until ill health forced his retirement in 1929. Among his many non-teaching responsibilities, he was secretary to the company that owned and ran the school, the Devon County School Company. Thompson, Joseph Thompson, was the school's first headmaster, appointed in 1858 at the age of 21, believe it or not. Perhaps he came cheap, we don't know. If the original letters of application and the relevant company minutes had survived, they would have made fascinating reading. Thompson presided as plain Joseph Thompson until 1871, when he took holy orders. As the Reverend Thompson, he continued in office until 1888, 30 years altogether. After retirement, he served as rector in 3 North Devon villages, Creakham, Romansley, and Walkley, from where he sent the telegram. He also embarked on matrimony at 54. His bride was Anna, the eldest daughter of the school's founder, the Reverend Joseph Brereton. Keeping it in the family, as you might say. Well, that was Taylor and Thompson. What was this meeting in Barnstable all about? Round about the turn of the 19th and 20th century, the school suffered some nasty crises, which came close to threatening its very existence. As a result of the last one, in 1907, there was a joint decision by the directors of the school was a company, remember, the new headmaster, Ernest Harries, and various substantial old boys and well-wishers, to wipe the slate clean and start all over again. The school company was to go into liquidation, go voluntarily bankrupt, if you like. The school was to be reformed as an independent establishment, reliant on fees, but with support from Devon County Council. Scholarships were to be offered to needy boys, whom the school were bound to accept. The old shareholders were asked to surrender their shares, with no compensation. Amazingly, they all did. We still have their letters of agreement in the archive. All this took time, red tape being what it is. 5 years to be precise. It was then that the official receiver, Mr. Fred B. Wyatt, announced that the final, ultimate, really absolutely last meeting to wind up the affairs of the Devon County School would take place in Bridge Buildings, Barnstable, on Friday, the 24th of May, 1912. The Devon County School would cease to exist, and a new one, to be called West Buckland School, was to take its place. This was the event that the Reverend Joseph Thompson said he could not attend. He had been retired for 24 years. The invitation was obviously a mere formality. Nevertheless, if anybody was entitled to be present, he was. Moreover, he knew the background. The decision was no surprise to him. The school had a new, dynamic and popular head. The future was beginning to look bright. But he declined. How many thoughts must have jostled in his head when he read Mr. Wyatt's letter? He sent that telegram on the very morning of the meeting. Had he been agonizing right up to the last minute? An obvious explanation, of course, is that he didn't feel up to it. He was 75 years old. But Walkley is not all that far from Barnstable, and he continued to attend school functions for several more years. He is recorded in the minutes as having been present at a governor's meeting as late as 1918. I don't think health is the reason. I should like to suggest another one. He had been there since before the beginning, when he and the Reverend Brereton had gone over the windswept open ground and discussed where the original buildings were going to be and how they were to be arranged. He had watched the school rise stone by stone. Over the years, he had supervised the planting of every tree and every shrub, and he knew what each one commemorated. He had watched the school grow from its original 3 pupils in a farmhouse parlour to over 150. He had taken pride in the achievement and fame of the Devon County School as the very first secondary school designed for and dedicated to the education of children of the middle class. Its pupils had come top of the national exam success table 3 years in succession. The Devon County School had been a national celebrity. He had been a regular attender at old boys' gatherings and was a familiar and popular figure in his black clothes, dog collar and monocle. As the years went by, he had relished his status as gruff great-grandfather to generations of old boys. Now, suddenly, they were going to change the school's name. His school. It was rather as if he had a son who announced after 50 years that he was going to change his name from Sam to Albert. His head told him that it was all the same underneath, but his heart told him that it wasn't. Not quite. However bright the future looked for West Buckland School, it wasn't his school. Not anymore. On the very day of the meeting, he sent that telegram to say that he couldn't come.